Welcome to another episode of Safe Space, the podcast for next generation family business leaders. Do we have a treat for you today? First time ever in the show, we have three siblings together in separate rooms, in separate places, just to maintain the peace. So, Paolo, Adrian, Carmen, welcome to the show.
Hey.
Thank you, Franco.
Thank you.
So before we get started, I'm going to ask Paolo, since you're the oldest one, to give a little bit of background about the family, where you guys were before we get started, and then we'll dive right into the show. So Paolo, the floor is yours.
Yes, Franco, thank you. So a bit of background from our family is that we are third generation. Our grandfather had started a company in the 60s called Salerno Dairy Cheese, and we had recently, recently being 11 years ago now, sold the company. And after we had sold the company, we had a bit of an identity crisis because most of our identity had been tied to the operating business that our grandfather had started and got passed along to the second generation, with us waiting in the wings. However, on our journey after the sale, or on part of my personal journey after the sale, had ventured into consulting and looking into establishing a family office for our basically what we had as funds that were liquidated assets from the sale of the company, and looking for means to redeploy it. And in my journey as trying to assemble a family office and also trying to build a consulting practice of my own, I was engaged with you, Franco, and the rest is history, as they say. But what was important about our connection together was that you put us on the path of, again, trying to untangle some of the emotional issues that are attached, that where lines are blurred between family and business. And from the work that we've done over the last several years, we've been able to understand ourselves on a personal level, and also respect ourselves on a competency and business level as well. So that's sort of where we are today. And I guess the other side of that is that we sold the business 10 or 11 years, where we were a bit maybe toiling with our identities, but now we're at a point where we are now actively engaged. We've built our family office beyond just passive investments, and we are now involved in active businesses and trying to build our knowledge and strength and our competencies in building those active businesses.
Paolo, sounds like you guys are in a completely different place than when you were when you started the journey right after the sale. So Carmen, can you expand on what the sibling dynamics were before you started the path with us and after the sale, and what was going on for you as, the only girl in the outfit? And so what was it like before?
Very silo type. So you do your thing, we each had our own individual jobs per se. But it also forced us to feel like that as a family. But yeah, when we were together, it was, we're a happy family, everybody loves each other, it's the right thing to do. So yeah, it was what we thought was normal. Again, those past generations, put on the smile and forced it, kind of on us. And so after the sale, how do you become a family and continue to be a family when your identity feels to be missing? And I believe we're back on that stronger, better path for sure.
So you talk about, this sort of fake harmony that you guys had, which, by the way, listeners, every family has the fake harmony thing going. Okay. So can you talk about how that was for you, Adrian, as a family? And what were you doing to desperately try and portray that fake harmony piece that you guys were putting out there, like all families do?
Yeah, I think a lot of it was just when you feel like you're losing your identity, or you don't know where you are at in your point in life after a sale like that. You try to sort of make things seem like they're more than they are to others. So, a lot of the trouble is you go out with your friends, or people in the community, and they're just like, oh, what are you doing now? Are you retired? And, I'm still in my 30s at that point when that happened. It's like, well, no, I'm not retired. I'm doing real estate, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, like making all these things to make it look like I'm so busy and I'm so important, right? So a lot of it was just trying to sort of fill a gap and then sort of kind of swing for the fences and make it look like you are taking on more than you were. And it was really tough because sometimes you could stay sort of lost in that moment, right? And a lot of it's individual. In working with you over the years, you always thought like, oh, is it because we sold the business? Like, who do I blame? Always looking for someone to blame. But I think a lot of it starts with yourself. And then once we sort of untangled that mess of ourselves, you start to see a bit clearer. You start to see how you interact with others and how others interact with you, and you sort of change how you navigate in life, and it helps breed success over time. That's one thing I've noticed.
Well, thanks for your absolute candor and honesty, Adrian, and taking accountability for where you've been, right? Because it has been a journey, and a lot of us as human beings, particularly family businesses, we hide ourselves, our true selves, behind the business and this entity that's been created. So, Paolo, so when the business sold, you were the CFO of the outfit. Where were you at individually, as an individual with yourself while operating the business? What happened to you when the business sold, and how did that impact your relationship with your siblings, who are now shareholders with you?
So I think the again, this might be a bit of repetition from what my siblings have said. I think the way things were before when we had the family business, because we had our own roles and responsibilities, we were never really given that opportunity to actually even really work together. We were, like my sister said, we were siloed, and as a result, there was I think there was like a lot of mistrust and resentment among each other, and again, not really done by design, but I think just that's just the way that the business was run. We had our parents and uncle. They ran the business as they would on their own, and sort of kept us out of it, and just let us play our own roles. And then after the sale, that basically that learned behavior just carried on. So we were, after the sale of the business, we were like, no, there was really no clear direction or leadership, because, at least before we had some structure in an operating business, someone was in charge, there was a strategy, there was a direction, but now we had to devise leadership and structure and direction for something that was completely different. So, with that said, so I think the upside of having sold the business was that at least we separate. Well, there were two families involved, so at least you know we sort of separate ourselves from the one side of the family, so that sort of allowed us to work with ourselves, right? And I think we were also in a spot where we had this long overdue, I don't know how you would call it, but something that was long overdue, where we had to do obtain some coaching and do some work on ourselves, which would have, again, under the culture and under the leadership of the previous generation, the older generation sort of frowned upon that, or never really resonated with them. So a bit of the gift in having this transition is that, yes, we had an identity crisis, and of course, with every crisis, there's an opportunity, and like I said, it allowed us to do the work, to come out as better people. And I think today, and because we've done all that work, we are in a much better spot today. Like, I have more confidence with myself because of the confidence that I have in my siblings, and like, I'm not doing it alone, right? So I have success breeds success. So I did the work on myself, and now that empowered my siblings to do the same, and we're now in a better spot for it. And I also see the opportunity where we can grow even stronger because they have confidence in me, and vice versa.
So, Paolo, you talk about doing the work on yourself. Carmen, can you share with the audience a little bit of what it was like before being the only girl in the outfit, and where your level of confidence was, and talk about what the work you did on yourself was, and where you are today with yourself as part of an ownership group with your brothers?
So to tie in with what Paula was saying, it was kind of like, So we know the dynamic, it's a family business, and I'm not referring to myself as a dog, but it was like, good job, okay, continue on. There was the praise or the satisfaction that would come out in an everyday job, let's say with a boss or someone that's not your family. There may be criticism, there may be positive and negative, but it was always the same thing. So like he was saying, like when we detached, I felt that we were speaking of our identity, but I felt like I had no identity. I was the owner's daughter, I was the youngest out of us three, the only girl. So it was kind of like, I felt like I actually had never had a place in that business because I just did what I had to do every day. It was a routine, never mind, a job. It felt like a routine. So I really had to take a step back for myself to just realize that I'm an individual. Yes, they're my siblings, but I myself have to focus on what's best for me and the strength that I have in myself. And, it was, oh, you're a girl, you cry all the time. And not just from my brothers, but from everyone that, kind of, I took that as a bad thing. And now I'm proud of that. I feel like I can not only dive deep into myself to realize that I'm struggling or that something doesn't feel right, but I also like to think that sometimes I can reach out to my brothers and say like, hey, take a minute. I know I'm the annoying one, but have a minute for yourself. Focus on, and I hope they appreciate that because I trust my gut. I trust who I've become and that strength. And I love that about myself.
So you talked about, what had to change for you. So Adrian, taking that theme, what had to change for you to really feel part of the ownership group and own your role and your responsibilities as an owner?
A lot of it was just self-trust. I felt like I always had to make a splash to make people think that I was, doing something great, and it's because I didn't trust myself. So I look at a point from where I operate today. I do trust myself. So I'm not always looking over my shoulder thinking like, am I making this person happy? Am I pleasing this person today? Because I think at the end of the day, it's like the exercise is finding how you please yourself first, in the sense that when you take care of your own spirituality and your own well-being, you trust yourself, then others trust you. So you go into work every day, or you go into, whether it's extracurricular activities like I coach, or if I'm coaching like sports, or no matter what I do, I always go in with trust, and I build the trust of the others around me, and then I'm able to operate freely. So like my thing is like, how do I operate freely? My one thing and my one goal in life is I just want to operate freely. I want to be free to fail, let's say. And I'm able to do that because of the trust I've gained in myself over the last 7 or 8 years. And I never had that before. So I think that helps. And I'm hoping that it's sort of went on to my siblings and my family as well, that me operating in a sort of a land of freedom and self-trust, I hope that I'm gaining their trust at the same time. And I can see it and I can feel it. So it's there, but they can speak more on that if they'd like to. But that's where it is. It's just figuring that out. A lot of it starts with ourselves, not with the outside noise.
So talking about it all starts with ourselves, Paolo, being the CFO in the group, I want to ask this first question to you. How did your beliefs about money impact your dynamics and decision making? Because, we all have a belief about money that comes from past. And this belief about money influences our decision making around finances, relationships. How did your money myth impact your decision making and relationship with your siblings?
Well, the way it impacted my actions, my behaviors, and my decision making was that, and of course, being the having being in a having an accounting background and everything, is that money is the result, right? So I tended to always have this mindset where money is how you measure your value and your self-worth, whereas that is completely different right now, right? The way I view money now is that money is a tool in order to get results that are beyond just financial. So you use money as a tool, you use money as time, you use money to obtain resources to drive your goals. But whereas in the past, worth was centered around, especially like in the early days where we tried to establish a family office, and you're not seeing much success there. It's like, well, what's happening to the value of our assets, and where's our revenues being driven from? And it was very demoralizing. it took a lot of work. It took a lot to get out of that mindset and to and now again, where we are today is a much different mindset because we've changed that, because we've changed that thinking. And then how that impacts my siblings is that, if I'm not just results, or if I'm not just results driven around, the value of money and what our portfolio value is, et cetera, et cetera, that also empowers them as well, because I'll say, look, we're, you know, we're investing in ourselves, and that requires not just investing time, but investing money. And let's change that mindset, and, come out as better people, try to build not just financial capital, but of course, social and intellectual capital. And that's, and then the money will come. Like, that's, again, the money is the result, not the goal, right?
So Paolo, you were the one that initiated, this process with your siblings. Every family has what I call a family champion, and you were the family champion. So Carmen, can you talk about, the benefits you've received as a result of your brother, who also happens to be the CFO of the outfit, took the risk to invest in human capital, which is the three of you. What's been the benefit of that for you individually and for you collectively as siblings and also as shareholders?
So the benefit was definitely, we've never had that, right? It's cliche, you never speak your truth, in a sense. We say that now, we understand that, but before, you'd speak your truth and you'd be like, yeah, go to work. Like, I don't know what you're talking about, type of thing. So I think the benefit definitely is the individualism that I especially dug down deep into. And I know when I first met Franco, I was going through some personal stuff in my life that, it seems like the end of the world, along with losing a family business. And to, go back to, how you perceived money, my mentality was, well, I always have it, so who cares? I don't have to be here. I don't have to do anything. I'm just going to get it. That very entitled, selfish brat mentality. But that brought me zero value. I felt like crap all the time, pardon my words, but I didn't feel good, even though the vessel was there, the tool was there to use it and do whatever I wanted. I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and how I could contribute to this team as myself. So the benefit I see is, again, we connect differently because of you. Again, we coached individually, and then we come together and we have those honest and uncomfortable conversations that I guarantee you my parents, per se, and even my the other business people with us, like, never wanted to have those conversations. And that's not reality. That's very glorified in what, we think we know.
Fake harmony.
Exactly. Fake harmony. It's very fake. And in turn, I was fake. I wore a mask. Everything's great. This is me, whatever. I truly suffered inside and went through a lot of anguish, but, come out on top. I'm the coolest person I know.
So Adrian, let's talk about the value that you got. Like, how do you put a dollar value on being able to trust yourself? How can you possibly do that? What's been the value of your brother, Paolo, the CFO, taking the risk of investing in each of you and collectively as a group? And what's been the return for you? How do you measure trusting yourself?
Well, I think a lot of it's just, I don't know if there's a way to measure it or put a dollar value behind it, because it's not something you can really buy. I think it's just over time you operate a certain way or you recognize certain things. And then, it's never perfect. You always revert back to some of the things that might make you lack trust in yourself or have lack in trust from others to you. It can happen, but ideally it's just understanding when it is that things are happening and being able to catch yourself. And even when it's one-to-one, like when it's like a sort of a self thing, you catch yourself when you're on your own, or let's just say if I'm interacting with my business partners or siblings or anybody for that matter, sometimes you catch yourself in that moment and you're able to sort of redirect how you're sort of projecting yourself towards others, or we both recognize and we're like, hey, let's have a chat after, let's not escalate this in front of other people. And then there's an actual conversation that happens as opposed to, fisticuff match or whatever used to happen back in the old days, right? So right. Yeah, there's definitely a lot that has changed. It's not perfect always, but it's way better. And I think at that point, you start to, I guess the measurement is being able to, I think a way to measure it is being able to say like, hey, we corrected something and it didn't escalate to something that was just going to be less proactive for our company or for our relationship. And I think that's what it is. The you say, how do you look at money? Like that's how the money grows, is when we're operating freely amongst ourselves and each other, it'll grow. When you're trying to make it grow and you're bumping heads or forcing things, that's when things start to stew over time and get worse. And we've seen that a lot growing up in our families, not just in our direct family, but even in aunts and uncles and other family businesses that surrounded us. There's a lot of ancestors of ours that don't talk to each other because of some sort of dispute to do with money, and they just didn't know how to operate amongst themselves to make it like, a harmonized transaction as opposed to, one with angst.
And Franco, if I could add something, it's also changing the mindset of like, Paolo is the oldest, the most educated, and coaching us to go this way. It's changing the mindset that he's the dictator. Yes, he's my older brother, but it's beyond that, because, I don't take what he says personally, whereas before I would, but it's realizing that like this team needs a lead and he's happy to have it, I hope. But yeah, it's changing that mindset, like, that dictatorship of like, I'm in charge, I'm the boss. Because it could be any of us one day, and we want to change that mindset.
Thanks for that.
Sorry, and to add to that, it could be one of our children one day too. So how do we teach them? How do we radiate that towards, like, by lead through example? When we're in a room together, our kids are also watching, just like we watched our parents and aunts and uncles and everybody else growing up, or their business partners, right?
So we're coming to the top of the show. So I'm going to ask each of you the same question. So think about it. So I'll start with you, Paolo. What's one piece of advice you could give a family business or a sibling who's part of a sibling partnership or a cousin consortium?
One piece of advice. Well, I think the advice would be to not underestimate the the emotional and the intangible side of one's self-worth and of the worth of the whole family and management group as a whole. So to build on that, I would say that I'm just looking at our situation is that old, and I touched on this before with how I used to think of money, is that a dollar in should equal $2 out, but when it comes to investing in ourselves, like when it comes to investing in ourselves, we would not have the potential to make a dollar and be $3 or $4 or $5 out without this the work that we have done. And it starts with yourself. So the first thing is, someone in a leadership position as I am, I think number one, of course, it starts with yourself. You have to look at yourself and make sure you're willing to do that work as well. You have to be ready to do it. But the thing is, once you're more accepting of actually admitting, or not admitting, but being able to be introspective and to change your behaviors, that will come back 10, 20, 30 fold. Everybody around you, not just family and not just family or siblings or those directly, but it could be anybody in the workplace will come back and be a different person because you're the cause of that change. Yes, and I think to kind of wrap it up is that thought is that, again, just to ensure that that you look beyond the tangible dollar for dollar, and that you look at the intangibles and how important it is for your growth, not just as yourself, but as an organization and as family as a whole.
Thank you. Adrian, what's one piece of advice you could offer, a sibling that has an older brother?
Yeah, I think a word of advice I could offer is that, you trust the process. If you can sort of understand that there's more to the dynamics than just one person, right? Because we all operate, before we go through any sort of coaching, we're all operating as like, oh, I feel like this or I feel like that, right? And I think once you realize that it's not just about yourself, it's about finding what it is that drives you to get better, when you find that place, then when you fix that first, then it sort of adjusts how you carry yourself in a room with an older sibling or a younger sibling for that matter, so that you're not constantly butting heads, because there are things about each other that will always kind of bug one another, of how we present ourselves, or how we react to sort of what they say to us, or how they react to what we say to them, and understanding what those triggers are. Because to operate freely in a business, or just to go out for a family dinner and enjoy yourself, we need to sort of be our true selves, but not the ones that are trying too hard to be something they're not. And I think everybody appreciates that around you. People will tell you when you're doing something good,
Carmen.
they'll pat you on the back when it's time to. So you don't need to work so hard to get that done. And I think sometimes if we all kind of figure it out, with one-on-one coaching first, and family coaching, sometimes that does help sort of find that path, because sometimes we're just lost out there. And just to trust that process, it takes time too. Another word of advice is, if you are going through these types of exercises, like, I feel like the last year or so is where I've really noticed the difference. And it's just like, sometimes it's just putting the work in. It's like anything else, right? It's like the greatest, pitcher or whoever it is. It's all about repetition and wash, rinse, repeat. And, eventually it becomes muscle memory, and we operate like that freely without reservation.
Thank you. Carmen, what's one piece of advice you can offer the sisters in sibling partnerships or cousin consortiums?
It's much more than just blood that connects us, or last name. Again, we have to look back, and again, it's exactly what we're here for today. Is the individualism is so important to truly find who you want to be. And a lot of the truth is, maybe you don't want to be in this business, and maybe, and you have to, we made this for you. And I've heard that sentence in the past, and this may not be what I want. And that dynamic, was hard, but now I enjoy being at work. I enjoy being with my siblings, even though I have a lifetime of torture as the younger sister, but it's beyond that, right? It's business, but the work is in you. I know that it's in everything. It's in working out. It's in, like Adrian said, sports, someone who wants to become a professional athlete, but the work is in you. It's far beyond the family dynamic, because we know that we're related, we're in this business together, but the work comes deep from you. And if this is what you want.
So I want to thank all of you for your openness and candor, and audience. I hope that, Adrian, Carmen, and Paolo really spoke to you. And as you know, our guests volunteer their time. We do this for you, the audience, because we recognize it's a lonely place sometimes being part of a family business. And our hope is that something here speaks to you. And as a result, you are generous enough to share this with your friends and colleagues that may be in the same situation as you are. Boys and girls, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been an absolute treat.
Thanks, Franco.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us, Franco.
Yeah. Thank you, Franco.